Have you ever wondered why a man's desire to go deep inside you feels far more psychological, far more ancient than anything happening on the surface of your skin? Why his hunger carries something that seems older than him, older than you, older than the moment itself? It is because what a man seeks in the depths of a woman's body is never just the body. It is the gateway into the unconscious, the door into the part of himself he cannot reach alone, the sacred terrain he both fears and worships. What you interpret as desire, he experiences as a descent, a plunge into the shadowed chambers of his own psyche. Every time a man moves toward a woman with that unmistakable intensity, he is not only reaching for pleasure, he is reaching for confirmation that he is still alive, that he is still powerful, that the chaos inside him can momentarily quiet itself when pressed against the warmth of feminine surrender. The world calls it lust, but Jung would have called it a psychic ritual. A man confronting the wild, untamed essence of the feminine that awakens the unclaimed parts of his own soul. And you, even if you don't realize it, feel this depth. You sense when a man's desire is coming from a wound rather than a presence. You sense when he approaches you not as a partner but as an escape route from himself. A woman doesn't need training to feel this difference. Her body knows. Her intuition knows. Because the feminine unconscious has spent centuries enduring the projections of men who were terrified to meet themselves in the mirror of a woman's body. A man's desire to go deep inside you is often the place where his fears collide with his fantasies. He wants to disappear inside you and find himself at the same time. He wants to conquer and be humbled. He wants to feel like a god and a boy all in one breath. The masculine psyche is full of contradictions, raw, unpolished, and unresolved. But every contradiction is an entry point into truth. And when he moves toward you, what he is truly seeking is not domination, but integration. Some women can feel when a man enters them with his whole presence, not only with his body but with his breath, his awareness, his vulnerability. This kind of man does not take. He descends. He does not rush. He opens. He does not hide behind performance or ego. He allows himself to be undone by the very energy he once tried to control. In that moment, the feminine becomes an oracle, not because she speaks, but because she reveals. A woman becomes the mirror that shows him the parts of himself he has ignored, the softness he abandoned, the longing he buried, the tenderness he dismissed as weakness when he was told to be strong at all costs, to be a man, to suppress, to silence. The truth behind his desire is that he is looking to reclaim the pieces of himself that the world demanded he amputate. And yet, many women misunderstand what happens inside him. They interpret his urgency as confidence, when often it is desperation. They interpret his distance afterward as indifference, when often it is fear of the parts of himself she awakened. Because for a man, entering a woman's body is not simply physical. It is psychological exposure. It is standing on the threshold of his own unconscious, where the shadow he has avoided waits patiently for his arrival. You have seen this in his eyes, that flicker of something deeper right before he touches you, that moment where the mask slips, the moment where he is not the man he pretends to be, but the man he actually is, uncertain, yearning, torn between wanting to possess you and wanting to be transformed by you. And this is where the feminine holds her greatest power, not in seduction, not in beauty, but in the way she becomes a catalyst for his individuation. A woman is the very terrain that draws out the man he could become if he had the courage to meet himself fully. And that is what terrifies him. Not your body, not your pleasure, not your expectations. What terrifies him is the possibility that through you, he will finally encounter the truth he has avoided his entire life. This is why a woman's self-worth changes everything. When you stand in your own psychological power, when you see yourself as more than the reflection of male desire, the dynamic shifts. His need to go deep inside you stops being a claim on you. and becomes a confrontation with himself, because the feminine does not become empowered by being chosen. She becomes empowered by recognizing what she chooses. And so the story begins not with what he wants from you, but with what you understand about him and about yourself in the moment he reaches for you with that ancient, trembling desire. What unfolds next inside him is something he rarely admits, even to himself. Beneath the surface confidence, beneath the hunger that seems so physical, he is wrestling with an invisible force, the archetypal confrontation between the masculine ego and the feminine unconscious. When a man moves deeper into a woman, he is, without realizing it, stepping into the inner terrain where his persona cannot survive. His masks fall away. His rehearsed charm dissolves. His emotional armor softens, and he stands exposed before a power he cannot control. This is why many men oscillate between craving deeper intimacy and pulling away from it. He is drawn to the place where he feels the most alive, yet terrified of the place where he feels the most vulnerable. When he enters a woman with genuine presence, the experience threatens the illusion of independence he has constructed his entire life. Suddenly, he is not the lone warrior, not the self-contained fortress, not the stoic figure untouched by emotion. Suddenly, he feels connected, and connection requires surrender. But surrender is something the masculine psyche has been taught to fear. From childhood, he was conditioned to believe that emotions weaken him, that needing someone makes him fragile, that dependence is dangerous. So when he experiences that profound flood of connection inside a woman, he instinctively retreats, not because he feels less for her, but because he feels more for her than his ego knows how to handle. You've seen it before. The man who seems emotionally present in the most intimate moment suddenly becoming distant afterward. The man who looks as if he's gone for a few seconds after climax, as if he's fallen into a silent trance. He isn't disappearing from you. He is disappearing from the persona he tries to uphold. Jung called this the collapse of the hero mask, the moment when the carefully crafted identity cracks under the weight of true intimacy. A man cannot hide who he really is when he is pressed against the warmth of a woman who sees him. Not his achievements, not his titles, not his bravado, but the truth beneath. And that kind of seeing is terrifying to someone who has never been taught how to be known. To go deep inside a woman, at the psychological level, is to be known. Not worshipped, not adored, not entertained. Known. And when a woman knows a man in this way, she sees both the king and the wounded boy, the protector and the punisher, the lover and the destroyer, the longing and the fear. And for him, this exposure is both intoxicating and unbearable. Because the feminine does not lie, she reflects. She mirrors back to him the pieces he has refused to integrate. This is why some men treat sex as conquest. It keeps them emotionally detached. It keeps intimacy at a distance. If he can dominate the moment, if he can stay in control, if he can perform, then he never has to face the parts of himself that tremble when true connection approaches. But the moment a woman invites him into a deeper experience, one of slowness, presence, vulnerability, the dynamic shifts from conquest to connection, and suddenly he is standing at the edge of his own shadow. This is where many women misunderstand their own power. You think the moment belongs to him. You think desire places him in the dominant position. But psychologically, he is the one crossing into unfamiliar territory. You are already at home in emotional depth. You are already fluent in intuition, sensation, vulnerability. Your soul was built with access points his has been denied. So while he believes he is entering you, it is often you who is entering him, entering the truth of his unconscious, where the rigid structures of his persona dissolve into something more primal and real. When a man goes deep inside a woman with genuine presence, he touches the archetype of the Great Mother, not the literal mother, but the symbolic feminine force that births, destroys, renews, and awakens. This energy humbles him. It softens him. It breaks him open from the inside out. Because suddenly, he is no longer the distant masculine figure staring at life from the outside. He is immersed in the current of emotional reality he has resisted for years. And that is where transformation begins. But transformation is a threat to the ego. The ego wants repetition, control, predictability. Intimacy threatens all three. When he feels himself dissolving into the feminine, he either expands or contracts. If he expands, he becomes more conscious, more empathetic, more open to connection. If he contracts, he becomes inconsistent, withdrawn, confused. Not because he doesn't want you, but because he is battling the internal conflict between who he has been and who he is becoming. And you, whether you realize it or not, become the catalyst. Your presence, your depth, your emotional intelligence force him to confront his own. That confrontation is what he truly seeks, but it is also what he fears the most. Because the woman who knows herself, who understands her emotional terrain, holds a kind of gravitational pull the masculine cannot resist, even when it terrifies him. And this is why his desire to go deep inside you is never just physical. It is the echo of a psychological longing to dissolve, to expand, to remember the part of himself he lost the moment he learned to suppress his own softness. As he moves deeper into you, something ancient stirs inside him. Not the physical instinct alone, but the archetypal memory of what it means to be truly connected. The masculine psyche has always been torn between two impulses, the drive to conquer and the longing to belong. And in the intimate space between a man and a woman, these two instincts collide with a force powerful enough to dismantle the walls he uses to protect himself from vulnerability. The moment he feels himself dissolving into that connection, his unconscious awakens. Suddenly, he is not just experiencing pleasure, he is experiencing recognition. A recognition of the feminine essence he has spent his whole life circling around, yet never fully understanding. A recognition of his own emotional depth, the kind he pretends not to have. And a recognition of the truth he rarely speaks, that he wants to be met, not obeyed, received, not impressed, held, not conquered. But this recognition is terrifying, because it destabilizes the entire identity he's built to survive. Many men have constructed their sense of masculinity on control. Control of themselves, control of their emotions, control of the outcome. They were taught that vulnerability is dangerous, that softness is weakness, that surrender is shameful. So when he finds himself needing you, when he feels the pull of emotional intimacy emerging through physical closeness, it threatens the foundations of his ego. This is why the masculine often fluctuates between intense closeness and sudden distance. You may feel him present, deeply connected, almost reverent in one moment, and then cold, distracted, or withdrawn the next. Women internalize this shift as personal rejection, but the truth is far more psychological. He is withdrawing from the part of himself he encountered inside you, not from you. Inside the feminine, he sees the reflection of everything he has denied: his longing for tenderness, his hunger for connection, his hidden emotional fragility. And because he doesn't know how to integrate these truths yet, he does what men have been conditioned to do: distance, distract, detach. But no distance can erase the imprint that real depth leaves on a man. Once he has touched a woman with presence, once he has felt himself open in a way that transcends physical desire, he cannot return to shallow encounters without feeling a crack in his soul. This is the paradox of masculine desire. He seeks the woman who opens him, yet fears her the moment she does. He may not say it out loud, but you can feel it in the texture of his touch, in the stillness of his breath, in the softening of his eyes right before he looks away. The man who truly desires you is not merely attracted to your body. He is summoned by your depth, a depth he is both drawn to and unprepared for. Many women misinterpret the masculine hunger as domination, but domination is only the surface layer. Beneath it is something far more vulnerable, the yearning to be undone, the yearning to let go of the constant pressure to perform, to lead, to guard. Inside the feminine, he is allowed, perhaps for the first time, to stop holding everything together. But to stop holding means to risk falling, and falling requires trust. This is where the feminine often feels confused. You sense the depth he wants. You feel the openness he approaches with when his guard slips, yet you wonder why he wrestles with inconsistency. You wonder why he holds back, why he goes silent, why he seems overwhelmed by the very connection he initiated. It is because he knows that to go deep inside a woman with true presence is to be transformed, and transformation demands sacrifice. The sacrifice of ego, the sacrifice of the warrior mask, the sacrifice of the emotional numbness he developed as a survival strategy long before he knew what intimacy meant. When he is truly with you, mind, body, soul, he is not simply entering a woman. He is entering an archetype, a force of nature, a feminine unconscious powerful enough to unmake the parts of him that are false and awaken the parts that are real. And that awakening is painful. It is destabilizing. It strips him bare. But it is also the only path to authenticity. The truth is that the man who desires to go deep inside you is searching for himself through you. He is looking for the version of himself that he cannot reach through logic, ambition, or stoic self-discipline. He wants to touch the part of him that feels alive, worthy, connected. Yet he doesn't know how to admit this without feeling ashamed. You, in this sacred dynamic, are not passive. You are the mirror. You are the flame. You are the psychological catalyst whose presence makes it impossible for him to hide from the truth of who he is becoming. And this is why your emotional strength matters more than your physical attractiveness. Men do not stay for beauty alone. They stay for the woman who can hold the depth they are terrified to confront. They stay for the woman who awakens their unconscious. They stay for the woman who sees them. Not the mask, not the bravado, but the soul underneath. They stay for the woman who refuses to shrink just to make him comfortable. And when you understand this, you stop fearing his intensity. You stop internalizing his distance. You stop shrinking your power. Because the deeper truth is this: the woman who stands in her emotional sovereignty is the one he cannot forget, cannot replace, cannot walk away from without feeling the weight of the absence she leaves behind. What begins to unfold inside him after that point is a quiet storm, a psychological unraveling he can neither articulate nor fully suppress. When a man has touched a woman with real presence, when he has crossed that threshold where the physical merges with the emotional and the emotional merges with the archetypal, something irreversible happens. He becomes aware of the depth he has been avoiding his entire life, and that awareness haunts him. Because now every shallow touch feels empty, every meaningless encounter feels hollow. Every attempt to control intimacy reminds him of the moment he let go, the moment he allowed himself to be fully present, vulnerable, unguarded, the moment he felt something real. Most men do not know how to live in that vulnerability. They crave its warmth but fear its consequences. They want the connection but fear the exposure. They want the energetic merging but resist the emotional awakening that follows. The masculine ego is built on the illusion of invulnerability, and intimacy shatters that illusion with a single breath. A man who has truly gone deep into a woman is not simply remembering her body. He is remembering himself. Because inside her, he felt the parts of himself he tucked away. The tenderness, the sensitivity, the longing. The boy he abandoned. The man he has not yet become. And when those parts rise within him, He doesn't know how to hold them. Every instinct tells him to retreat into what he knows: control, distance, self-preservation. This is why he may suddenly act colder, more withdrawn, more unpredictable. Not because he desires you less, but because you touched the parts of him he has not yet integrated. You awakened the shadow he never examined. You illuminated the emotional terrain he has never walked with steady steps. You brought him into himself. And that is the most frightening journey a man can take. The feminine often misreads this inner battle. She assumes his distance means disinterest. She assumes his silence means rejection. But the psychological truth is that withdrawal is the masculine defense against transformation. He pulls back not because he feels nothing, but because he feels too much, and his psyche has not yet evolved to hold it. Yet, even as he distances himself, the imprint remains. The memory of depth becomes a quiet ache he carries everywhere. He may try to bury it beneath distractions, busyness, stoic logic, even other women, but nothing resonates the same. Nothing feels as alive. Nothing feels as real. Because that experience with you wasn't physical, it was archetypal. And archetypal experiences cannot be forgotten. They shape him. They break him open. They carve pathways into his consciousness that he can no longer ignore. He begins to notice his own behavior differently. He feels the tension between who he pretends to be and who he becomes when he is with a woman who reflects his soul back to him. This internal tension is where men transform or regress. Some men retreat even deeper into avoidance, trying to reclaim the emotional numbness they once relied on. They try to convince themselves they don't care. They double down on the hero mask, on distance, on detachment. But the truth gnaws at them. They know they tasted something that requires courage. The courage to be seen, to be vulnerable, to be emotionally present rather than just physically present. Other men feel the pull to evolve. They feel the discomfort, the vulnerability, the confusion. And instead of running from it, they pause. They question. They begin the slow, painful unraveling of the persona they built for survival. These men start stepping toward emotional availability not as a weakness, but as strength. The strength to be real. And you, without even trying, become the axis around which that transformation turns. Not because you rescued him. Not because you tolerated his inconsistency. Not because you shrank yourself to make him comfortable, but because your depth demanded his. Your emotional presence exposed his emotional absence. Your self-awareness awakened his unconscious. Your inner strength illuminated his inner fractures. And now he is left with a choice. Evolve into the man capable of meeting you at that depth, or retreat into the smaller version of himself that can only survive by staying shallow. This is the secret every empowered woman eventually understands. You are not asking a man to grow. Your authenticity naturally requires it. The feminine that is rooted, conscious, emotionally sovereign becomes a psychological invitation, a mirror that says, "You can meet me here, but only if you become who you truly are." And some part of him knows this, even if he can't say it. That is why he is drawn back even when he distances himself. That is why your presence lingers in his thoughts longer than he admits. That is why he feels a strange mix of desire and fear around you. Because you are not simply a woman to him. You are the threshold of his own evolution. And the masculine psyche knows that stepping across that threshold means leaving behind the boy who avoids, the man who pretends, the persona that protects him from his own depth. It means confronting the parts of himself he buried long before he learned to love, long before he learned to desire, long before he learned to harden. With you, he remembers what softness feels like. And that memory is powerful enough to rewrite him from the inside out. The deeper truth emerges only when the internal storm settles, when the masculine psyche finally realizes that what he feared was never you, but the version of himself that awakens in your presence. The man who goes deep inside a woman in body but not in consciousness can walk away unchanged. But the man who enters with awareness, vulnerability, presence, he leaves with a permanent shift in his internal landscape. He has seen himself without the armor. He has felt himself without the mask. And now, every part of him must decide whether to rise into that authenticity or retreat back into emotional exile. But something in him knows he cannot truly return to who he was. The old defenses feel heavier now. The emotional distance that once protected him now suffocates him. The numbness that once kept him safe now feels like a prison, because he tasted presence inside you. He felt what it's like when his soul is allowed to breathe, and no amount of avoidance can erase what the body knows, what the psyche recognizes, what the unconscious remembers. Women often believe they're the ones who become attached, yet the attachment formed in a man runs far deeper when it is born from real intimacy. Masculine attachment is quiet, hidden, and slow burning, but it is powerful. It grows in the silence, in the absence, in the space where he thought he could forget but instead finds himself returning to the same emotional imprint again and again. Not because he cannot live without you, but because he cannot forget the version of himself he became with you. And this is the part most women underestimate. Your power does not come from making him stay. Your power comes from the impact your presence leaves on the psyche of a man who is not yet whole. You were not just a woman in his life. You were a moment of clarity, a mirror, a catalyst, a psychological initiation. You brought him to the edge of himself, the place where the boy ends and the man begins. And he felt that boundary trembling when he was inside you. He felt the old patterns pulling him back and the new self pulling him forward. He felt the familiar urge to run and the unfamiliar urge to open. He felt torn between the discomfort of vulnerability and the deeper discomfort of losing the one place where he felt real. Every man who experiences this depth must face the same dilemma: evolve into the man capable of meeting a woman at that level, or suppress the awakening and numb his way through life. But here is the part that transforms you, the part that allows you to rise into your own feminine sovereignty. His transformation is not your responsibility. Your role was never to fix him, never to wait for him, never to mold yourself around his wounds. Your role was simply to embody the woman whose presence exposes the truth inside him. And once the truth is revealed, the path he chooses is his alone. The empowered feminine does not chase potential. She honors reality. She sees what a man could become, but she does not sacrifice herself to drag him there. She understands that depth must be met, not coaxed, that vulnerability must be chosen, not extracted, that emotional maturity cannot be forced upon someone who is more loyal to his fear than to his desire. And this is where your liberation begins. Not in what he feels for you, but in what you feel for yourself. You begin to understand that your depth is not a burden. Your intuition is not too much. Your emotional intelligence is not overwhelming. These are gifts. These are filters. These are the very qualities that separate the men who can love you from the ones who cannot stand the reflection you hold up to them. The woman who knows her worth does not shrink herself to be chosen. She elevates herself to choose. Because the truth is this: not every man deserves the depth you carry. Not every man is ready for the psychological intimacy you bring. Not every man has done the shadow work required to stand in the space of a woman who can see through him. And it is not your task to lower your emotional frequency just to make him comfortable. You are not here to soften your magic so a man can pretend he is not afraid of it. You are here to rise into the fullness of who you are, and allow only the man who can meet you at that altitude to walk beside you. This is the rebirth. This is the detachment. This is the psychological freedom the feminine must claim. When you stop clinging to what he could be, You make space for what you were always meant to be. When you stop tying your worth to whether he stays, you realize the true power was never in his hands. It was always in yours. Because the woman who understands the depth of her own soul becomes untouchable, unforgettable, undeniable. She does not chase. She does not beg. She does not collapse into longing. She stands. She chooses. And the man who is ready, truly ready, will rise to meet her. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.